Welcome to your daily Prosperity Pep Talk. My name is Melanie Monaco, and most days I go live to share a short transmission on sacred leadership and how to activate your work as a sanctuary for your soul's calling so that your offerings can become a force for healing, magic, love, and liberation in the world. I'm an initiated priestess from a lineage of spiritual leaders and female entrepreneurs, and I've built my business as a devotional offering. I guide healers to weave their medicine and modalities into sovereign wealth-building movements. And today, for our Prosperity Pep Talk, we're talking about what you receive and what you sacrifice on the path to spiritual leadership. This came up in inspiration for me, this topic, because I posted a reel on Instagram the other day about self-love. And in essence, it's like, if you want to love your body, which was my original niche when I first started my business, if you want to love your body, you have to counterbalance all of the overcultural conditioning that's telling you to not love your body so that you spend money on it. And you have to counterbalance that with just as much like affirmation and love and confidence boosting work. And that's a huge practice of self-love. And there was a comment that was like, but somebody said below the video in the comment, they were like, but you have to be prepared to lose people along the way, because once you love yourself, like people get really triggered by that. And I was thinking about that. This is a common refrain in the spiritual world of once you begin to wake up, people are going to be triggered by that, and you're going to lose people and put up boundaries. And, to a certain extent, I do really understand how this comes to be, because when we do begin the process of deeper healing, we do realize the ways in which we have perhaps been sacrificing ourselves in order to benefit other people and keep other people happy. I think there's been quite a pendulum swing in the personal development and spiritual world that's like, well, yeah, if people don't understand, they're not for you. And this kind of binary of wanting to not keep people around if they don't totally get what you're doing. I have since become really interested in this idea of deepening in relationship to people, having curiosity over judgment. And while I think, and I have like cut out toxic relationships because they're like severely detrimental to my safety and well-being, I have also tried to become just more curious, and less like high and mighty around, just because I'm on a spiritual journey, like I see things other people don't, like I don't buy into that rhetoric anymore. And so this kind of inspired me to think about what as spiritual leaders we stand to gain and lose, and not just in interrelationships, but along just the process of stepping into leadership, because it is quite a big shift for many people who have not shown up in the spotlight, who have not shown up and shared themselves in this way. And there are people in your world, once you begin to, if you're somebody who's like, okay, I've never really shown up on social media like this, or I've never like started a business, there are people who might be like, whoa, who does she think she is? Like, this is coming out of nowhere. and that can be jarring, and then that can create some rifts. And so if that sounds like it's you, I want to prepare you with a practice that I think could be really helpful. And that is to preconceive your reason why and your mission. And I think people will soften, and you'll be surprised if you can name like why you're doing this in a language that feels that people can receive it. You don't have to use the word soul calling. You don't have to use the word this is my life's purpose, if that isn't going to communicate and land. I think we can meet people where we are and say, well, I just really want to help people, and this is really inspiring, and this is where my interests lie. And that's a pathway to describe why you're doing what you're doing to folks who maybe aren't going to get it. One of the benefits of deepening in spiritual and personal development is that we actually can have more flexibility and fluidity. We don't need to expect people to understand us 100%. We don't need to put these expectations on people to have the same exact level of awareness or understanding of spiritual language. Like, we can meet people in a more like neutral place, and that doesn't mean that we're less spiritual. It doesn't mean anything's wrong with them. It's just, if that's not where somebody's interests lie, can we be a little more open to inviting them in from a more like entry point way? I also want to name that if you're somebody who is perhaps far along in your journey and you have felt that judgment from people, right? Going into a place of forgiveness to the best of your ability while still holding, necessary boundaries of, they just might not understand. And that's okay. We don't need everybody to understand. What happens in this dichotomy that I think I'm really trying to name here is, on one end of the spectrum, we are trying to please everyone, and we're trying to protect ourselves from people judging us for things they don't get. And then on the other end of the spectrum, we're like so protective of ourselves to the point where, like, well, if you don't understand, that's on you. I think let's let both of those go. Let's let both of those go and live somewhere that feels empathetic, non-judgmental. Because if we're in that very strict place of, if you don't get it, if you're triggered by me, that is your problem, that I feel like can just put us in a place where we're not going to be as safe for people, like, who are perhaps curious, and perhaps they're not asking the right questions, or they're not using the right terminology, but they're not like actively out to get you, right? So relationships might change, because the topic of this Prosperity Pep Talk is what you receive and what you sacrifice, right? Relationships might change, but what you also get is new communities. And that could be through courses, it could be through memberships, it could be through friendships that you develop from trainings that you do and people that you get to work with. I have made some incredible connections with other spiritual, sacred healers and leaders in my local community from Instagram. Like, people just following me and saying, hey, I also live in Southern Maine, and like just creating a connection that way, which is really beautiful. And I think, I've been lucky to have really great friendships over my life so far. That doesn't mean that every friendship has lasted, but I have some really deep, meaningful, like, soul sister friendships. And the friendships that have lasted are the ones that are willing to celebrate and support, like, where we celebrate and support each other, even if we have different missions. And also, my business and this work in the world has given me this whole other landscape of friendships, of people who do similar work, who speak a similar language. And that is really fulfilling and really powerful, because we get to support each other. And I've met friendships from training, or I've met friends from trainings and other spaces. Like, one of my best friends, I met in a training, and I feel so grateful. So we might lose some relationships. We might have some relationships just feel a little more distant, but we also gain relationships, and that's a huge plus to me. One of the other things that you get to experience is feeling of living in alignment with your soul. And what you have to sacrifice for that is the performance of somebody that you aren't. You have to sacrifice squeezing into a mold that society or the people who raised you or the community that you're in is trying to put you in. And that can be uncomfortable to break out of that, to break free. But once you do, it is so beautiful to be able to show up as yourself in all spaces. Like how I show up here with you is pretty much how I show up everywhere. I mean, I do listen more than I'm not just like talking at people ever ago. But you know what I mean? Like I am myself no matter where I am. And that's not always the case for folks. Some people feel like, oh, when I show up at my job, I'm I'm professional. And when I show up at home, I'm very silly. And like, you get to just, when you commit to the path of spiritual leadership and you run your own business and like you are your business, you get to just be yourself all of the time, which is amazing. And if you don't know who that self is, you get to figure that out. My favorite part of myself, one of my favorite parts of myself is the part of myself that comes out when I am doing this work, especially when I'm coaching people. I swear that is a huge part of what carried me through my grief process after I lost my mom and my grandmother. Being able to like set my stuff aside for an hour or two and just sit with somebody else and their own stuff, like just being part of their healing journey was healing for me. And being able to not be like in my own world and my own stuff for that amount of time, because I'm so present for somebody else when I'm coaching them. It was a gift. It was a real gift. So when you're able to do the work that makes you feel most like yourself, that brings you into a place that feels so resonant, and it's a gift in many more ways than you would expect. The other thing that you get to receive on the path of sacred leadership is impact, right? Like you only really need to have that one client who is like, you changed my life, or that session just really changed things for me. I made a difference in my life. Like I changed something after that. I made a new choice. I made a new decision to prove to yourself that the work matters. You really only need one person to say, wow, that was so amazing. And now I know I'm going to do something differently. Like the fact that you have helped one person make a decision and take one new action is revolutionary. It's amazing. And so you can use that as proof, and that'll grow again and again and again over time. The more work that you do, the more testimonials you'll have of people who are like, wow, I just really, like, this changed my life. It is pretty cool, I have to say. Like every day, getting messages from people who are grateful for what you've created. It's like, it's amazing. It really is. But in order to get to that point, we have to be in integrity. We have to be ethical. But when you are in your soul's mission and like you're doing work that is truly aligned with who you are and what you're here to do, the testimonials that come in, it's just a byproduct. Like you're not even doing it for, of course you're doing it to help people, but you're not doing it for the accolades or the recognition. You're doing it to be of service to your own soul purpose and of other people. And that's an amazing gift that you get to receive. But you sacrifice the ego in the process in order to get to that point. Like you have to be cringe and showing up and sharing your work with the world in order to help the people who want to work with you or who are waiting to work with you. Like there is an entry point that you come to, honestly, again and again and again, of like being uncomfortable showing up and sharing the thing and being like, well, I hope people like this, and I hope people get it, and there's going to be people who don't understand it. Right now we're coming back full circle to the beginning. You're not for everyone. You are for people. Some people. There are people who like really can only transform through you because of your unique medicine and the offerings that you have to offer the world. There are so many things so many teachings in the world, but the way that you say it, the way you communicate it, your transmission of it is bathed in your unique light, in your essence. And because of that, that's what allows it to land with people it wouldn't otherwise land with. The path of spiritual leadership is not easy. It does require sacrifice, but what you get in the journey is like far outweighs the sacrifice. And ultimately what you're sacrificing are things you don't want anyway. Right? The feeling of not fitting into your career, the fear of people judging you, the people pleasing, the fawning, like you want to let go of those things anyway. And if we can do this work, especially from a place of service where like it isn't about being liked, though we do want to be safe for people, right? That's the difference. It's like, oh, I just really want everybody to like me versus like, I want everybody to feel at home in my presence. That's the leadership shift, right? If you're like, I want everybody to like me, then it's maybe going to be more performance and maybe isn't as much integrity. And then, we're back in people pleasing roles and looking at vanity metrics of how many followers you have versus like how much impact you're actually making and how safe and alive and recognized and honored people feel in your presence, which I think is that's the real metric of success. If you're somebody who feels called to deepening your spiritual leadership, I would love to invite you into the Hearth. It's my temple for sacred leadership. It has a full-fledged business course on creating, marketing, and scaling an offer. We have archetypal transmissions, new moon, full moon ceremonies, which one of our members yesterday requested that I do the moon ceremonies live. And I talked to my husband, because if you don't know, I have a baby. Well, I have 2 kids, but one is a baby. And I was like, do you think I could make this happen live? Like, do you think we could coordinate? And so I think I'm certain the full moon and new moon ceremonies will now be offered live. And I'm also considering, Melissa, I think you're watching live here. I'm considering doing the archetypal transmissions as live temples as well. Which is, if that's something members are interested in, I think that could be really cool. So we have archetypal transmissions into leadership initiation, and we also have the new moon, full moon ceremonies. We have the kindling, which is a daily devotional practice, and we have our community. So I would love to invite you into the Hearth. You can go to hearthtemple.com. You can go to the link in my bio. Wherever you're watching this, I put this in the show notes as well, because I do cross-post this on YouTube, Substack, and my podcast. And I hope to see you tomorrow for another Prosperity Pep Talk. I actually just had a card pop out of my deck I was holding in my hand. The card of the day is duality. Duality, which I think I said that word exactly, or something close to it earlier. The duality, right? What you sacrifice and what you receive. That's the duality. Melissa says, so excited for this in the archetypal transmissions. Yes. Yeah, I think it would be really cool to do those live. I'm planning on doing like a larger initiatory process ceremony with the archetypes. We have 7 archetypes for sacred leadership. Each activate a different part of leadership that needs to be activated in order for you to be in your fullest expression as both a sacred leader and an entrepreneur. And I'm thinking of doing like larger, longer temples, and then also a short like tune-up transmission that you could listen to on a later date. So for example, we have the creatrix archetype, which is the archetype that helps you like really birth your medicine into something tangible for people to receive, like a course or a workshop or a book, whatever you want to create. And I'm thinking like we'll have a longer, 2-hour-long creatrix temple ceremony where you like really fully embody this energy for yourself and release what you don't need, like what's holding you back from living in that archetypal embodiment. And then a quick tune-up, which would be like a 10-minute long guided meditation to reorient yourself. So it's something you could listen to before you sit down to work on a project for your business. I think that could be really cool. That would be for all 7 archetypes, the bigger temple and then the tune-up. So anyway, lots in development in the Hearth. I hope you'll join me there if you're not already. And I hope to see you tomorrow for another Prosperity Pep Talk. Blessings to you.